Hi, my name is Tanya and welcome to my small backyard vegetable garden here in central Victoria. If you saw my last video, you would recognize these beautiful black nebula carrots. They were absolutely delicious. You may also remember that a few months ago I trimmed back all my capsicums when I transferred them into terracotta pots. These are the branches that have been hanging here with all the fruit slowly ripening. These Mad Hatter capsicums have colored up a lot. Even the candy cane are looking absolutely beautiful, and they have outlasted anything that I have put on my kitchen bench in the fruit bowl waiting to ripen up and be used. I have previously used this method for ripening up late autumn tomatoes, but it is fantastic to see that capsicums will survive longer on their branches if hung out under a protected spot. I'm not sure if any more houseplants were necessary, but my mum and I were at Bunnings having our cup of coffee and happened upon these houseplants all marked down to $3. I'm not sure if you can walk away from one of these indoor plants for $3. I grabbed two because these are the plants my daughter finds the hardest to survive here in our area, so a couple of little practice plants won't go astray. I've had these broad bean seeds sitting here in my basket for weeks now. I bought them quite a while ago in the hope that I'd get onto things quicker if I had them sitting there. I always have good intentions of moving through sowing seeds quite quickly, but life gets in the way. One thing I do find that moves me along a lot faster is if I just go out there, not think about it, and pre-soak seed. That way I have to go back out there and get on with it. So here I am at the potting table with the beautiful afternoon sun coming in, and I have two of my favorites with me, Hunter and a cappuccino. So I am ready to get on and get a few things ticked off my list. It feels like ages since I've sown seeds, but really it's been probably a couple of months. Finding homes for all the things that I sowed early on in the year has been a bit challenging, and my ongoing cat problem has stopped me planting anything in my arch while I decided what I would be doing about that area. But I'm going to move on and get these broad beans into a seed snail. I did this last year and they turned out fantastic. Along with all my snow peas, they all got sown into seed snails as well. I find making sure the soil is damp enough to hold together, it makes rolling them so much easier. I'm reusing a piece of hessian that I had sown cauliflowers into. I just hung it up to dry and it is dried very stiff, but there doesn't seem to be any breaking down of the hessian, so I think it should be fine for these fast growing broad beans, and I'm just going to reuse it and it will probably then go into the compost bin. I just like to line them with my used Coles bags. I get my shopping delivered, so I always have plenty of them on hand, and they have worked out really well. I've done this all before in previous videos, so I apologize to anyone that might find this a little boring, and I'll move through it quite quickly. My plan is to plant these broad beans amongst my raspberries. I did this last year and it worked out great. It brought the bees in for the raspberry flowers. Also, I think planting the beans amongst the raspberries benefited the raspberry plants. I have really loved using the hessian and I think it works quite well, but unlike the bubble wrap, they do stay damp if you have a lot of rain on them during a cooler weather. So during winter, they need a bit more management than the bubble wrap, but during the summer, the bubble wrap can get too hot, I found. Both bubble wrap and the Hessian have bonuses depending on how you want to sow and how much you want to keep an eye on them and your climate, I guess. But I am so happy to keep more plastic out of my garden. So I'll be pushing on with the Hessian and just making sure that they don't sit out in the rain. I am not at all being picky about how I put these in here. They probably could have gone a little deeper, but I will be bunch planting these in amongst the raspberries and they will survive no problem at all. All I want to do is get the nutrients out of them for my future raspberry plants in spring. So I've put a thin layer of soil along the seed snail. I have placed all the beans, doubling up with rows, and then put a fine covering of soil over the top. This is exactly what I had done last year with my peas and beans, and then rolled them up. It makes for quite a chunky roll, and making sure I get enough soil over the top, I squish it down so that they have plenty over them, because there is always a little bit of soil that comes out the top edge as you roll. But I must say that this tray that I found at the op shop has been the perfect surface for rolling seed snails. One bean had already started to try and shoot, so they are pretty keen once the water is soaked into them. Now it is a time of waiting and things move pretty slowly this time of the year, but I have my fingers crossed that I haven't left it too late. One thing I did sow very late was these rudbeckias. I had planned to wait until spring, and fellow gardener commented about trying sowing them in autumn because they take a long time to get going. So I went ahead with that because I'm always keen to try something different, and they did germinate. They are quite tiny. They are in those coir pots, so I'm going to move them on into some nice open soil. This is just a seed raising mix with some worm castings, and I've added some perlite into it just to make sure that they don't get too damp over winter. Now they are tiny, but I am hoping that they will get a little bit more growth in under the protection. I'm going to, maybe through the cooler weather, put them on my gas hot water tank, and it'll be just enough warmth to get them through. I'm not quite sure. They are a perennial, so I'm thinking that they die back, but maybe they will stay green in quite a protected spot. Our beautiful warm autumn has managed to get them this far, and it would be nice for them to make it through to spring, but if not, I can always get some more seeds and start them all over again, because gardening isn't always about production and the end result. For me, it's more about the journey and the learning. And of course, the joy that being out in my garden, like today, in the sunshine, with my hands dirty, and totally enjoying all the benefits that gardening brings. I am glad I am getting on to potting these on now. The roots are growing through the sides of these coir pots. I think they look happier already. Now into some sauces and a good drink of sea salt. Hopefully that will buffer any transplant shock and also settle the tiny seedlings into the soil without me having to press too much around them. Moving on to my next lot of sowing, which may be a little controversial, but I did try this last year, except it was a bit later in the season. And that is sowing some carrots into seed snails. Now, I got them in far too late for trialing this, and germination was not good at all, so I didn't get to see the project through. But this time I may be a little earlier. I am keen to see if they will transplant into the garden and grow on. Carrots can be tricky for germination, keeping them covered, making sure the birds don't dig them up, making sure the tiny shoots don't get eaten off. The list goes on and on. And anything that makes that process a little bit easier may be worth trialing. And it would be interesting to do this through summer also. Get some seeds in early and transplant them across in warmer weather. Here where I am, June, July and August are apparently not ideal times for sowing carrots if I go by what is recommended on the packets. So I'm doing it in completely the wrong time. I think it depends on the carrots. I think it depends on your microclimate, and it might be interesting to keep trying this at different times of the year to see if you can get success. I have some seeds that I mixed. I just opened a whole heap of different packets because pulling up carrots is such an exciting time, I think, for any age. And when the surprise comes as what color you're going to pull out of the ground, that is something I'm there for. And I had planned to sow them in the garden beds, but hadn't got around to it. So I'm just going to throw them in here and see what happens. This may be a complete fail, but I will hopefully try and remember to try this again in the ideal sowing times and see if that works also. I sowed a whole packet of seeds for those black nebula carrots and did all the right things, kept them dark, kept them damp, all the things, and still germination was not very high. Maybe that was due to the hot weather we did have, but I think this is worth trying. Imagine being able to sow your carrots into these, transplant them into the garden beds, and they were at the size where you didn't have to really worry about the birds digging them up or keeping them damp and cool and dark. To me, that sounds ideal, so it's worth trying. And of course, the bonus with sowing into the seed snails is that there is no base to the pot. Today is the day that these eggplants come out. They are producing no more, and our cooler weather will deplete the plants, so I'm going to pull them out. I have some beetroot that are really struggling in the seed snails, and I would like to get them in and moving along. I'm just going to move all this wool across to the pots that have the turnip seedlings in them. It might give them a little bit of protection from any kind of slugs and snails and keep that soil nice and damp. I don't eat any of the leaves off these turnips, but I do out of the garden beds purely because Mrs. Possum has access to the top of these. I'm just going to top dress this soil. It has been feeding those eggplants all summer. Just going to divide these up in quite large bunches, and if they make it through, then I can always scatter them out. Last year I dug up a heap of beetroot. I direct sowed to thin them out and transplanted it into a different garden bed, and it worked out really well. They transplanted much better than what I thought they would, but what ended up getting them in the end was some very hot days, and they ended up going to seed. But I did harvest a lot of the leaves for eating. I see this as nothing different than potting on. If you had seedlings in tiny little seed trays and then you potted them up a bit. So maybe something will come of these and maybe not. And of course it won't be long and it will be the ideal time for sowing beetroot seeds again. This is the joy of having a small vegetable garden, moving things around and moving crops on to find space for the next lot of crops. It can be a juggle, and you just do what you can do with the space you have available. I'm putting more of this trellis across these pots. The birds have been in and dug up my beetroot, and I certainly do not want them digging up any of my parsnips. I have a roll of netting which I will transfer this to, but for now, in case I forget to come back up and do something, I want to put up some sort of barrier. When this was stretched out, they were getting down in between it. And these are the turnips. A quick water in with some sea salt. Just a quick check-in on my rhubarb. They are performing so good with that top dress and the mulch and the cow manure, the mushroom compost. They are loving it. For this time of year, I think they are doing fabulous, and I really do need to pick another bunch and make the most of all this wonderful growth. Even these newer, younger plants, this is the Parker's Red. I bought that in a pot and it hasn't been in there that long. And the pink champagne, they were two tiny little plants in pots that I bought marked down. In fact, all of these except for one, the giant Russian rhubarb, was marked down. Now, to make sure the cat does not get into my raised garden beds, I am covering these beds up for now. And I cannot believe that I still am getting raspberries, although they are very slow to ripen. And for the amount of frost we've had so far, I am pretty happy with how the banana is looking. The leaves on these raspberries are turning, and look, a raspberry. I'm not sure how many of these will ripen up, but we are making the most of every little jewel that we find. And the gorgeous color of my favorite tree. Nothing beats the color of a Japanese maple in autumn.